Hey everybody, Michael the Maven here. Today I'm going to follow up on the polarized light video. Many of you had questions about other kinds of filters and how they work, what their applications are, and I wanted to follow this up and give you guys my thoughts and suggestions as well as some of the science behind it. Probably the most common filter that you're going to come in contact with is the UV filter. And I actually don't own any UV filters anymore. That should tell you something. Now, this is a personal preference kind of decision. My dad, for example, has UV filters on every single lens that he owns. A UV filter is essentially a coated piece of glass with filter threads on it. You screw it into your lens. The idea behind this is that it offers a layer of protection, supposedly from UV light, but all glass is going to block most certain types of UV light anyway. So what are you really getting? I think it's an upsell. Camera accessory manufacturers, they want to make some extra money. So whenever you buy a lens, there's that UV filter option. And there are some lenses that offer legitimate weather sealing when you include a UV filter. That is the case. I have seen pictures of lenses that have been saved by UV filters. In the end, I don't drop my lenses a lot. And the reason I don't use them is because it's an extra layer of glass, and I feel, just me, it softens the image a little bit. I tend to want the sharper images, and anytime you have an extra lens element or an extra piece of glass in there, you run the risk of getting softer images. But I know many people that swear by them. It gives them confidence when handling their lenses to feel like they have that extra layer of glass on there. I just don't use them personally. The most common question I got after the polarizing video was about circular polarizers. What is the difference between a linear polarizer and a circular polarizer? So light has a wave-like property to it. And usually when we talk about the angle of the light and the direction of the wave, we're talking about the polarity of the wave. Usually when it's random, that wave is spinning, going in every direction. Linearly polarized light means it's moving like this. Circular polarized light means it is moving in the shape of a corkscrew, helical, predictable, consistent. Now, many of you will ask, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing for DSLRs because light becomes linearly polarized after it bounces off smooth, flat surfaces. And inside most DSLRs, we have this mirror array. That is a smooth, flat surface. Some of the light bounces up through the pentaprism so we can see what's going on. Some of that light bounces down into the focusing array to help the camera focus. So when you have light hitting a mirror, it becomes polarized. So this is where circular polarizers become cool, is because linear polarized light, as it's hitting that mirror, we don't know the angle or the intensity, and it becomes a little bit more unpredictable, and the camera cannot meter that light as accurately. That's why it's important that when we have circular polarized light, that light intensity is more consistent and more predictable. So that's why we use circular polarizers, is to get a consistent, predictable sampling of light as it's bouncing off the mirror. So you're probably wondering, how does a circular polarizer work, and how is it different than a linear polarizer? Circular polarizers have two elements to it. There's a linear polarizer, part one, and something called a quarter wave plate. And the quarter wave plate is oriented very specifically next to the linear polarizer. So it knows, the manufacturers know exactly the angle that the polarized light is exiting the linear polarizer. In the quarter wave plate, I'll put an article on Wikipedia. It's very interesting. Suffice it to say that it manipulates two elements of the light wave. There's a slow wave and a fast element to it, and it slows one of them down. Okay, and so the idea is that it reorients those two phases and it comes out helical, corkscrew. That's the easiest explanation, but if you want more information, check out the article. It explains it. So many of you are probably going to have the question, well, what about mirrorless cameras? Would circular polarizers help mirrorless cameras? Yeah, they'll help, but is it required? That is a really good question, and I think the answer is probably not. You probably don't need circular polarizers on mirrorless cameras because you're not bouncing off a smooth, flat surface. I don't know, that's a good question. But in any event, that is what a circular polarizer does. Most of the polarizing filters that you're going to find for cameras are circular polarizers, and this is what we're used to using. Those two pieces of glass are fused together. They're not two independently rotating pieces of glass, and I think there was some confusion about that. So here's my filter bag that I carry my filters in when I go shoot on the beach. There's 3 filters in here. You'll find that interesting. Let's talk about plain old ND filters. I prefer glass filters because they last longer. Most low-end filters are plastic, which means you're constantly going to have to clean them, and that's when scratches occur. But there are some really good quality glass filters. This is a 0.9, about 3 stops of light. It's essentially sunglasses. There's no polarization, and this is used to lower the exposure of the shooting environment that you're in, everything. Typically, most commonly used for outdoor shooting. I will use this for slow exposures when shooting in bright, sunny days. If you want to use a fast aperture light and you have lots of light coming through the lens, it's going to overexpose. ND filter, huge, huge tool. Filmmakers use ND filters all the time because they're shooting within a specific set of shutter speed and apertures, okay? So they don't want to manipulate the ISO too much. So exposure is very often manipulated in the film industry with ND filters, and we see many high-end video cameras that have built-in ND filters. If you look at the Canon C300 Mark II, Canon C200, the list goes on. Those cameras have ND filters built into them. So you just push a button, very nice. And you'll notice that these filters are square, they don't have threads. The way this works is you get something called, this is a P-Coken filter holder, and you can see that it grabs on to the filter. I can drop that in, and I can drop this in front of a lens. So the way you get the filter holder onto the lens is you get an adapter ring for your lens. So in this case, this is a 72mm thread. If you're not sure what your lens filter thread is, you look under the cap. It's underneath every single cap of just about every single lens. Buy the filter thread. You can buy these in kits, super cheap on Amazon. You can get like every filter thread possible. And these connect through a lip on the P-Coken filter holder, and it clips in. It rotates freely, but there's this little lip here that prevents it from falling off. So that's how we get these square filters in front of our lenses. Then I could take this, drop it in front. This is probably the cheapest and easiest, fastest way to start shooting with filters. You can buy these kits on Amazon that they're not great quality, but they have every color you can think of, like $30 or something like that. Again, I like the glass ones. I think they're better quality. The color's better on them. But to get started, why not? So let's talk about gradient ND filters. This is a plastic one. It's made by High-Tech Filters. I want to say this is about $35. And I am a big fan of the 1.2 gradient filters with a hard edge because I shoot sunsets. And so I want to get this hard edge on the horizon to get an even exposure between the bright sky and the waves and the beach that I'm shooting on. So this is also used to lower exposure, but only of part of the image. And this is controlled by how high or low the filter is. It's a plastic one, pretty good. It's actually a pretty good one, but the problem with the plastic ones, I go through them. In a year or two, it'll be scratched up from wiping it off so many times or whatnot. So I like the glass ones a little bit more. They're more expensive. This one has a reflective coating on it. I think I spent $150 on this, but I use it so much, to me, it's justifiable. So those are gradiated ND filters. Many of you have asked about variable ND filters, and I have one here. I bought this variable ND filter when it first came out. Man, I'm embarrassed to say I spent $400 on it because I was thinking, well, I'll just have this variable ND filter and I'll use it all the time. Okay, so a variable ND filter the idea is you have 2 movable pieces of glass, and as you rotate them, it gets darker and darker until you can barely see through it. These are not ND filters. This is two linear polarizers oriented next to each other. That's it. There's no reason why these should cost $400 other than the people who make them are being really greedy. I no longer use variable ND filters simply because I don't like the color and the consistency of the exposure coming through them. I've had very mixed results. This is an emergency, last effort thing. If I don't have an ND filter, I will use it. But for the most part, I don't use them anymore. I use plain old simple ND filters. So that's what a variable ND filter is. It's two polarizers next to each other. If you're not sure if you have an ND filter or a polarizer, if there's no markings on it, they should be marked. Look at it in a mirror. Take it into your bathroom or wherever and look at it in a mirror and turn it around, and one of the sides will completely block the light out if you're using a polarizer. It's kind of a fun, interesting thing to do. So there are a couple more filters I should kind of point out. Is I have some colored gradiated filters. I have this little handy filter box. And my favorite one is the red one. It's plastic. This one's all scratched up already just from handling it. Basically what you're doing with this is you're changing the colors of the sky physically. You're putting a color filter in front of it. It's kind of fun, gimmicky. It gets old after a while. I stopped using them, but there are color gradient and there's colored filters. You can get every kind of filter you can think of. But in any event, that is an overview of the most common types of filters that you should be aware of as an advanced photographer. There's probably a couple more I didn't mention. If you guys want to leave those in the comments, let me know. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I will see you next time. If you found this video helpful, you might be interested in one of my many courses on DSLRs as well as advanced techniques. They're available worldwide by download, and they come with a 100% money-back guarantee. You can order them from the following link.